Hi everyone! Welcome to How to Photograph Plants, the Leaves edition. I want to start by issuing a disclaimer here that we do not solely rely on leaves for identification. They can be a great place to start as it will show you the arrangement, as in alternate, opposite, subopposite, etc. But you should always look at other features of the tree. And this is because leaves are not consistent within a species or even in a single tree. Leaves can change in size, texture, and color, and this is due to tree age, the nutrients in the soil, the amount of sunlight the canopy gets, pest and disease issues, and many other reasons. Moving on to what features we use on a leaf to help with ID. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with the petiole, which is the stalk at the base of the leaf that attaches the leaf to the twig. The petiole can provide a lot of information. On the top left here, we have the petiole of Populus balsamifera. Most petioles are round, but in the Populus genus, there is a flattened petiole. The next image on the right is Platanus x hispanica. This image shows a hollow petiole, which is found in most Platanus species. This is because the petiole encapsulates or covers the buds. On the bottom, we have a leaf from a Prunus kazan. These pink nodes close to the leaf base are called extrafloral nectaries. These are common to the Prunus genus. They vary in size and in color, and they can be very useful to speciate members of the Prunus genus. The point of attachment is another feature of the petiole that can help to distinguish between species. Sometimes it is difficult to differentiate between simple and compound leaves because the new growth is green and the petiole is green and the rachis is green, which makes it very difficult to determine in spring and in summer especially whether you're looking at trees with simple or compound leaves. But the base of the petiole, there's a flared, thick end. On the image on the right-hand side, we can see the thick, flared end of the petiole, and we can see that the leaflets on the left portion of that image do not have the flare where the leaflets attach. Now we'll go on to leaf form, starting with simple leaves. On a simple leaf, the margin or the end of the leaf is continuous throughout the entire leaf. There are no breaks in this leaf. The margin of the leaf may be lobed or serrated, but it is never disrupted. Moving on to a compound leaves, we will discuss two kinds, starting with pinnately compound. This slide has a total of 4 leaves. You may have thought that it was way more than 4. But if we look at our point of attachment, there are 4 significant flares. If we look at the juglans leaf on the far left, we can see that the margin of the leaf is disrupted into 15 leaflets held together by a single rachis. Some trees are bipinnately compound, like the gymnocladus leaf in the center. Bipinnate leaves are doubly compound, meaning that this leaf formation has many leaflets held together by a rachia, and all of the rachia are held together by one rachis. Some trees, like the gladitia on the far right, have both pinnately compound and bipinnately compound leaves. The final leaf formation we'll talk about today are palmately compound leaves. In this case, each leaflet is connected at a central point that ends up resembling a hand or a palm. In the aesculus leaf on the far left, you can see the distinct flare at the base of the petiole where the leaf attaches to the twig. Next, we'll move on to venation, and we'll discuss 2 main types. The first is pinnate venation. This pattern of venation has a central vein, which we call the midrib, and all the other veins branch off along the entirety of the midrib. Palmate venation has one point where the primary veins arise. Then along these individual primary veins, smaller veins branch off. Generally, there is a primary vein for each lobe of the leaf. Now we'll move on to leaf shape. This is an exhaustive category filled with what seems like hundreds of different shapes. and I'll cover just a few of these. Going clockwise, we'll start with our first shape, which belongs to Tilia americana. It is a cordate or heart-shaped leaf with an oblique or asymmetrical leaf base and an acuminate or long, thin, pointed tip. Next is the linear-shaped leaf of a salix species. Top right is a deltoid or triangle-shaped leaf, which belongs to Populus deltoides. It also has a acuminate leaf tip. On the bottom right, we have liquid ambar styrosiflua, which has the palmate or hand-shaped leaf. And finally, we have an ovate or oval leaf with an acute tip, which means the tip forms an angle less than 90 degrees, and this leaf belongs to Itea virginica. Now we'll move on to margins and sinuses. We'll start with leaf margins. Leaf margins are another exhaustive category with many different morphologies. I'll cover just a few of these. When we talk about the margin, we're talking about the edge of the leaf. On the top left, we have what we call a bristle-tipped margin. It has sharp-looking projections along the margin. On the bottom left, we have an entire margin, meaning smooth. I remember this one by saying the margin is entirely smooth. The next two images we'll talk about have serrated margins. To remember this, think of the serrations on a knife. On the top right, we have an image of a leaf that is doubly serrate. This means for every serration on the margin, there is a second, smaller serration paired with it. Below that image, on the center right, we have a leaf with fine serrations along the margin. Take a minute to compare the fine serrations with the double serrations on the picture of the leaf above it. And finally, on the bottom, we have a leaf with an undulate or wavy margin. Lobes and sinuses are an important feature to mention when you're describing a leaf. A lobe is the leaf tissue, and the sinus is the space between lobes. In the image on the left, we have a sugar maple and a Norway maple. The sugar maple leaf has deep sinuses with 3 to 5 well-defined lobes. The Norway maple leaf has shallow sinuses with 5 to 7 well-defined lobes. On the top right of the slide, we have a sweet gum leaf. This species can be confused with maples, although maples have opposite arrangement and sweet gum is alternate. But the sinuses of a sweet gum, depending on the cultivar, are much deeper when compared to maples. Oaks have numerous lobes. Rounded lobes belong to the white oak group, and oaks with pointed lobes belong to the red and black oak group. I remember this by thinking of how a red oak with a pointed tip could cut me and I would bleed red blood, whereas a rounded tip of the white oaks wouldn't cut me and I would not bleed. Not that these leaves will hurt you. The number of lobes and depth of sinuses can be used to help speciate oaks, but you should always use the bark or acorns or buds to confirm. All the information we discussed earlier focuses on broadleaf deciduous trees. So now we'll move on to evergreen foliage. Plants in the Cupressaceae family often have scale or awl-like foliage. On the far left, we have Sequoiadendron sempervirens, which has awl-like foliage. In general, this awl-like foliage is sharp to the touch. In the center, we have Calocedrus decurrens, and on the right, we have Chamaecyparis obtusa. These two species have foliage with overlapping scales. This type of foliage ranges from rigid to easily flexible, but they are not sharp to the touch. Each scale is a leaf, and each cluster of leaves is referred to as spray. Sprays are often in the shape of a triangle or a fan. On the underside of these sprays, there are usually wax deposits. In Chamaecyparis obtusa on the far right, the wax, to me, resembles turkey feet. Thuja plicata has wax deposits that resemble butterflies, and I see X's in Chamaecyparis lawsonia. Needle-like foliage is probably what we most often think of when we think of evergreens. Evergreens with needle-like foliage generally belong to the Pinaceae family. On the top left of the slide, we have a hemlock. These needles are spirally arranged around the twig, but appear two-ranked with the top and bottom needles flattened against the twig. This foliage is soft to the touch. On the bottom left, we have a spruce. Members of the Picea genus have spirally arranged, rigid needles, which are often pointed, making them sharp to the touch. In this center, we have a hard pine. Pine needles are held together in a papery sheath along the twigs. Hard pines have 2 to 3 needles per bundle. Soft pines or white pines have 5 needles per bundle. Generally, the foliage of this genus, Pinus, has soft foliage, but shorter needles may be somewhat sharp. In the top right, we have a true fir. Members of the Abies genus have spirally arranged needles that can appear two-ranked in the shade. True firs tend to have soft foliage that smells of citrus when crushed. Another defining feature of Abies needles are thick, white stomatal bands on the underside of the leaf. On the bottom right is Douglas fir. Pseudotsuga has spirally arranged needles that resemble the foliage of true firs. However, the needles are not as thick as members of the Abies genus. Our final topic today is broadleaf evergreens. On the left, we have Ilex opaca. Many ilex species are evergreen, but not all of them. On the right, we have Quercus virginiana. There are a few evergreen oaks, but they're not terribly common here in Vancouver. To summarize the lecture, leaves are just one piece of information when identifying a specimen. You need to use other features to confirm. Leaves can vary in size, color, and texture, so you need to look at multiple leaves in the canopy. Looking for the petiole can help distinguish between compound and simple foliage. Field guides often have image keys to leaf shape and margin type with extensive details. Many different families and even some angiosperms are evergreen. It's important to look at the shape and pattern of the foliage to get to a finer taxonomic classification. Thanks for joining me in How to Photograph Plants Leaves Edition. If you have any questions, feel free to check in during office hours or email me and I'll be happy to chat. Thank you.